All right, shall we say a prayer and then we can get going?
Oh, yes, please.
In the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Lord, we offer this to you for the greater glory of your kingdom. Bless our time together, bless our conversation. Help us to be men after your own heart. And if this be beneficial for the sake of your people, may it so bless them too. We ask all this especially to be watched over by the intercession of our Blessed Mother, as we pray. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. So first question is, Peter, are we recording?
Yes, we are.
Oh my God! Oh, we are recording. Are we recording on your end too?
We are live.
Are we professionals? Oh my gosh, this is
you
insane.
can say that.
So I guess welcome to Musings on the Divine. I'm calling it that because why not? Cheers to you all if you're watching in TV land.
No one's gonna watch this.
No one's gonna watch this. Yeah. I mean, honestly, that was the thing. I don't genuinely care if people watch this or not. Not that I don't care. I mean, I care, but like, I always think that the heart of good conversations is that the ability to waste time talking about good things.
Yeah.
Right. So we look at all the great traditions of of the West and really probably the East too, arguably, but like philosophy and theology. And part of it was the ability to sort of waste time on good topics. Right, that I could spend in time on things talking about, like, well hold on, why is this the case, and why does this matter, right? And those are always, for me, in seminary, were some of the most interesting conversations, were things that people just enjoyed. So, we were talking about that. My sister and I, we came up with the title for the podcast a long time ago, and we called it Musings on the Divine because we didn't want it to sound like we were trying to catechize people, because we weren't trying to catechize people. We were just talking about good things that we enjoy talking about. And I think that's kind of like our thing here. Oh, golly, I'm sorry. I should introduce myself. I'm Father Rory Trainer. I'm the priest of the Diocese of Manchester, New Hampshire. And with me today is JD and the Stonemasons, or at least part of them. Not all of you. How many official members of the band are there?
There are 5 official members.
And then about, if you include the unofficial members, we have something like 10 or 12 people.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So you guys really fluctuate out with like a huge number of people.
Yeah, when we're just doing this, we're JD and the Stonemason.
Oh, okay. It's the singular. It's the singular. Drop that down.
That's our subtle hint to audiences. They're not going to get the whole thing.
So why don't you two introduce yourselves for the sake of argument? So
yeah, well, I'm JD. I'm obviously in the band, and David's the guitar player. I'm the fiddle player. Yeah, I don't know. How much introduction should we do?
Where are you from? You're from New Hampshire.
I'm from New Hampshire. Yeah, I'm from Lancaster, New Hampshire, is where I grew up.
Which is like that northern part where like we were kissing Canada, right? You're
pretty
like
much. Yeah, North Country.
You're a hop, skip, and a jump from like the Canadian border, right?
Yeah,
it's nice and warm up there.
The sister state to Idaho. That's from what David says, and it actually makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. Really? Okay, we're gonna have to go back to that, but okay, I want you to introduce yourself, and then I want you to explain why it's the sister state to Idaho.
David could do it better. He's the one that actually first told me about it.
Yeah, because I feel like you've mentioned this before, and I've always been curious, but now I really want to go to Idaho just because out of curiosity. By the way, for most New Hampshireites and New Englanders, the world doesn't exist past New Jersey. We don't know what exists. We know there probably must be something that you don't just fall off the face of the earth, but we don't have a conception of what that actually looks like.
For all good people, New Jersey is kind of off the map anyway.
Oh, yeah. We love all people from New Jersey.
Sure,
just a general
sure.
That's
Yeah,
true
totally,
statement.
yeah.
Go ahead. But go ahead and introduce yourself, sir.
David Counts. I am what do you want to say? I'm actually the only member of the band who's a stonemason.
Yeah.
Or has been a stonemason. But
are you really?
Yeah.
I thought James was at one point.
No, he's a lumberjack.
Oh wow. So is your title like a lie? Are you guys lying to me?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
We're totally fraud.
Did I ever tell you the story of how the band actually got its name?
No, I don't think you ever did.
I was working with a guy named Bruce, who's my journeyman stonemason. This is actually right down the road. This is like.
What is a journeyman? I'm sorry, confused.
Oh, so it's just like a professional stonemason.
Okay.
You have apprentice. Well, really, you have tender, mason tender, which is the lowest. Then apprentice, who actually participates in the building. And then you have journeyman, who's basically a fully fledged stonemason.
Oh, wow.
And then you have master.
Oh, okay.
And so he's kind of like, he knows everything. He can do everything. So master stonemasons are very rare, but
it's kind of like a Jedi.
It's like a Jedi.
Well, no, it's
they know the ways of the Force.
It's the medieval guild system. Just kind of.
Oh, okay.
It's still alive in the trades, and basically all the trades, at least the languages. But
wow.
But Bruce used to play in a band called the Cellar Dwellers.
The Cellar Dwellers?
Yeah.
It was like very New England. They just dropped the Oz.
Yeah.
Nice.
And he's that kind of guy, but he he was really into Black Sabbath and kind of the metal scene, so that was kind of what they would play. This is like back in the 80s or whatever. But I was joking with him one day. I was like, Bruce, we should make a band. Like, you play guitar, I play guitar. We should make a band. We'll call it Bruce and the Stonemasons. And then, you know, like, that was just kind of a running gag. We were like, oh, yeah, like, we'll get Bruce and the Stonemasons together this weekend, and we'll go, like, you know, tear up local bars or whatever. Never happened, sadly. But yeah, it was when we met that we were hanging outside the pub where we first played, and we're kind of like, wow, this is great. This needs a name. Like, what do we call it? And I was like, JD and the Stonemasons.
Yeah, the name was totally David's idea.
Wow.
I don't know if I would have put my name in it.
Yeah, I didn't really want my name on anything, just because if the band succeeds, then great, everyone wins. But if the band fails, then you look like an idiot. So
Yeah, thanks.
It was a way of shifting blame. It's not very Christian, but it's a thing. It's very common, but it's not really technically a Christian
Well,
virtue.
actually, the reason that I gravitated toward JD and the Stonemasons was because, so the original members are you, me, and James Podvin. James and I were doing music all through college together.
Mm-hmm.
And I had hit the point playing music where I was like, well, we're never going to really make a proper band until we get somebody who actually like has shredding abilities musically. Because I could play chordal guitar, but that was about it.
Right. Okay, I'm sorry, for the plebeian in the room that is me. What do you mean by shredding?
Oh, just like solos, basically.
Okay.
Like,
All right.
Now I'm at the point where I can kind of fudge solos on guitar, because we've been hitting the books pretty hard. But at the time, it was like, when we first played together, I was like, oh, this guy, he can actually take solos. So it's going to be he's like the musical oomph behind the band. So JD and the Stonemasons. And James just kind of had to pretend to be a Stonemason.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So James has been lying to me all these years, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, it's much more me lying and James not correcting it.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
But I feel like it kind of participates in the lie. I feel like if you brought that to confession, I would say it's a sin. I'm not 100%, but I'm like 99% sure that I would call that a sin. But anyway, regardless.
Well, it's also a band name. Like,
The
band
Beatles
names
weren't
don't have
actually.
to.
Okay,
They don't
fair,
have-
I
the
guess.
Beatles weren't actually Beatles.
Yeah.
What?
The Monkeys weren't actually
I
monkeys.
thought they like had Beatles in their pockets or something. I don't know. Like,
Yeah, they were lying the whole
It gets,
time.
it,
They were
gets,
lying.
it gets worse. The Monkeys were just people.
What?
Yeah.
These are all lies. I've lived my
Village
whole life.
people weren't actually.
The village
from
people
a
were not from a village. They were just.
They were people,
Wow.
as far as we can tell.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, if you took band names literally, yeah.
Oh my gosh. It was actually a white snake. That's what that was in the band. All the band was like John of the Cross, St. John. They all just drank poison. They all like, oh gosh. Okay, so you met James Potvin, the Bodrum player, in predominantly Bodrum. I'm not sure if he plays anything else, but he does vocals. I know he does Bodrum.
Yep.
At Thomas More College in New Hampshire here.
Yep.
But how did you two meet? Did you meet through James then?
It was because of Andre, I'm
Yep.
pretty sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I've known James for a long time, since he was like a little kid, or we both were. And Andre had gone to Thomas More and visited you guys there one time.
Yep.
And he told me all about it. He's like, yeah, this is college, like, they're all kind of weird, you know? but they're really into like folk music, and this is guy David Callance that you got to meet. And I was like, oh yeah,
Did you
okay.
actually mention me?
Yeah, I did, before I
That's
ever
really
met
funny. Okay,
you.
wow, how about that?
And he's like, you got to meet this guy David Callance. I'm like, yeah, whatever, you know.
That's right, because he would have stayed in my room. You were just talking about
Oh,
it
I
the
guess he
other day.
probably
Yeah,
did.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't even know what he was doing down
yeah. I
there.
barely remember that. This is like freaking.
Yeah, it was years ago, but yeah, so it was that first barn dance that he had done up in Lancaster,
Oh wow.
which was like freezing cold out.
Yep.
And we had that first jam session by a campfire,
Nice.
and I played for like 15 minutes, and then I started complaining because my fingers were cold. So that was like the first impression we had of each other anyway.
Dang.
And it wasn't until we got together at like Annie's house, I think,
Yeah.
and we jammed that in one night, and then we went down to Salt Hill with the instruments.
Yep. Right down the road here.
And 8
Oh,
hours
okay.
later,
Yep.
and a few Guinness later,
Few. Yeah.
free. They were all free.
They didn't make that mistake.
I know, they never did.
Yep.
But after that, that's when you came up with the band name.
Mm.
Or at least that's when you introduced it. And yeah.
Wow.
One thing led to another. We had our first gig about a month after that.
Really?
Yeah.
That quickly afterwards.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'd actually been chomping at the bit. I was, by the way, just for the record, Peter Yost is recording this for us, a good friend of mine. And
Oh,
Thanks,
yeah.
Peter.
Cheers to Peter.
Peter and I were working on an album, just plugging away. That's where Willow Grove came from.
Oh, hold on. I remember this.
Yeah.
You had a YouTube video up with like it was like an hour-long YouTube video. Is that correct, Peter? Am I looking like an hour-long video that was just like a bunch of songs put together?
Oh, Counts on the Lawn?
Counts Live on the Lawn.
Counts Live on the Lawn. Yeah.
Funny Dance or something.
Yeah, because I remember I had just met you somewhat recently. I think after that when that
Yeah,
came
that would
out.
have been about the time. Yeah.
And then because the first time I met you was at my diaconate reception after I became a transitional when I was ordained a deacon.
Yep.
Andre was really kind of the impetus of that too because I didn't know who most of these people were that were showing up
Yeah.
at my house.
I saw a video of that party. It looked wicked fun.
It was super
It was
fun.
really
So
good.
fun.
You weren't
to miss.
there?
I missed it. Yeah, I had a
Oh
gig
my
or
gosh!
something.
Wow, you hated me back then. My gosh.
Yeah.
Well, you should talk about that. This
I
healing
was,
thing
I was
happened.
like, he's not even Father Rory.
He's not even.
gonna go into
Tell him he's a real priest. That's what I want to talk to him. When he becomes a real priest. Oh, that's fine. No, because I remember one of the songs you would play on that, which is probably arguably to this day my favorite song that you've ever recorded was the Stone Walls. Is that its official name? I don't know actually.
Stonewall's in New England.
Oh, is that the
Walls
first time you played it? Like the first time you heard it?
First time I heard it was
Oh.
then.
So
And I was like, this should be the anthem for New Hampshire. This should be like our song. Like,
Yeah,
it
it
hasn't
should.
caught on yet, but
yeah. Well, I don't have the clout.
when people
so.
actually hear the words, they love it because it name drops like 12 towns in New Hampshire. Or whatever.
Oh,
yeah. Hold on. What were we just talking about?
I forget.
Stonewalls. Right, the video.
The video, yes.
Yeah, so
yeah.
Peter and I have been working on stuff for like, at this point, like about a year. So I was kind of chomping at the bit. I wanted to get out there and do something, but again, with James and with the people I was around, like I was like, none of us really have like a musical oomph. You know, like we could carry a tune, we could harmonize, we could do all sorts of things, but we didn't have any shredding power. There was no, the motor force for the band was wanting.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, this almost seems like, and again, I'm probably making this up a little bit because this is where like part of my theory about doing kind of stuff like this, having long conversations and recording for the sake of recording them, because I'm a millennial and we think everything we ever do should be recorded and put online. But to have that conversation because there's something unique about the fact that like I think even be able to discern that was kind of interesting. Like there has to be like sort of a hook, for lack of a better term, right? That like would be of interest to you, right? This sounds. I say this as someone who has almost zero ability to do anything musically, right? But like I guess any schlub could pick up a guitar and start playing a song and basically hold a tune, right? But what you seem to be indicating is that there has to be this other thing that sort of gives it, for lack of a better term, maybe a gravitas to it, right? Anyone can make sound and make it sound pleasant to the ear, but someone's gonna be able to catch your attention that something's unique here.
Yeah.
Part of my worry for that was just the nature of folk music, because like I would gladly go and just hang out with anyone singing a folk song or playing a folk tune, but that's kind of my shtick.
Right.
We do that basically all the time on our own for fun. But for me, like I thought, if we're gonna make a band, if we're gonna go out and actually perform in front of people, if we're really gonna try to make this thing take off, then I knew I was like I wouldn't go to see myself go play. You know, like I wouldn't, like I was saying out with James and all my friends, I was like I wouldn't go out of my way to like go see this if I were looking to go see music, you know.
Devilishly handsome as I am, I wouldn't go to see
No,
myself.
naturally, yeah. And I was freshly bald at that point.
Oh my gosh! So yeah, the
it was
perfect chrome of the
still
dome.
memory of
Exactly.
yeah. But yeah, so it was much more that once we started playing, I was like, okay, now we have something that we can actually really like put out in public, and people in theory are gonna like it.
But you know, I also don't think it's just how do I word this? I don't think it's just a modern cultural thing, right? Like you think about like Michelangelo or Da Vinci or something. They always had like a bunch of other apprentices.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the plural? Is that
Apprentices.
Yeah.
Apprentices.
Apprentices. Wait a minute, hold on. That's something else.
We're gonna start speaking French.
I know, you never know, right?
It happens.
But like all these guys were doing other parts of his paintings, or they were doing aspects of it, right? But you don't remember, like no one remembers the names of these apprentices, right? Who are arguably incredibly talented to be able to keep up with Michelangelo or Raphael or Da Vinci or other great artists, right? But these guys had, for lack of a better term, like they had something where they could see the world in a different way than most other people could, which I find is again fascinating when it comes to like the artistic sense of the world a little bit. Because that actually brings me up to something we were talking about on the porch the other night. And I'll see if I can lead up to the question the right way so you get the sense of what I'm actually asking. 'Cause I do want both your input on it. I've been in the priestly / like liturgical world for, golly, 11 years steadily, 8 years of seminary, 2.5 years. So 10.5 years, let's say, for the sake of argument, right? That means every day of my life, right? There's always some sort of liturgy I'm going through, whether it be liturgy, the hours, the mass, something like that. And sometimes it's always kind of surprising me when I get someone who's like, I'm asking to like lector for the first time or do something else liturgically, and they're nervous about it, and I'm like, why? Or they make a mistake, and I'm like, and my brain, I'm thinking, well, why isn't it just obvious? Like, well, you wouldn't do that. You would stand there and do this with your hands, or you'd sit there, and they're like, well, Father, where am I supposed to be? Where am I supposed to stand? What am I supposed to do? And I'm like, well, it's obviously here, right? And for me, it's just like, I don't have to think about it. Right, because it's sort of just instinctual. Yep. Like there was a ritual I did at Trinity High School a couple days ago, and I had never done it before. But I remember I opened up the ritual. I read through it once, maybe like 3 weeks earlier, and I opened up the ritual, and I was like, I think I like glanced at the page, and I kept on going, and I was like, I had no problem with just executing the rubrics like that. Because I didn't have to think about it. I knew exactly, because it matched all these other things, and I knew where it fit into the realm of like other liturgical movements and why it would make sense here and not other places.
It's like a
and I can explain
swapping, like changing oil on a car.
Right.
He knows the connection between this car and that car. I'm
exactly.
Speaking totally off the top of my head because I don't know how to change oil on anything.
But my brother, one of my brothers, like who does a lot of electrical stuff, could tell you why like this gauge of a wire is more important than like a different gauge, and like why what needs to happen with the voltage there.
Yeah.
But I guess to my mind, my question for you two is, you guys have definitely passed that 10,000 hour mark, right? When like they say like you actually reach professional level when it comes to playing an instrument or doing something professionally, right? I think you guys have definitely passed that mark.
Possibly.
For your brain, like, okay, but for your brain, like to quote unquote shred on a violin, right? It's not like you're thinking about what to do in the moment, right?
No. Depends a lot on where we are, I guess.
Okay.
Like if it's here and it's just like in the living room and there's no pressure at all, then it's just like, obviously if we have a couple beers or something beforehand too, it's like
we don't drink.
No, of course not. But you're in the comfort of your own home, so
right.
it's just completely different than when you're playing like a live show.
But like the muscle memory is kind of...
The muscle memory is the same. I think it's mostly just about like, you and I are kind of the core of the band, and so most of what I get worried about is just making sure everybody's ready and everybody has what they need and everybody's like on the same page. Which is something you kind of have to do if you're like the two of us are kind of the leaders of the band. I've played in a lot of other bands before, and you just show up with your stuff and you play, and it's like, oh, I don't care if this whole entire thing goes south. Like, I don't care. I'm just here to play, and I'm gonna walk away with money either way.
You're a subcontractor.
It's somebody else's problem if it's a terrible show. You know.
So okay, you're pointing out something. I didn't interrupt you, but well, evidently I did because I did interrupt you. But
this is your podcast.
We
don't have a podcast.
Yeah, because it's so official right now. It's so official.
Yes.
No, but like there's this, like you sort of touched on it, right? Like if it's a professional gig, I kind of don't like. Maybe I'm not invested in it personally, right?
Yeah.
It's sort of a contract, right?
Yeah, I want to do a good job. I want the band to sound good, and I want us to be worth what we're getting paid. Yeah. And I want people who, especially if people buy tickets to go to a show, don't want them to walk away and be like, wow, that was a waste of money and time, you know, like, and usually, which, I mean, actually, we're pretty much always fine. We're always right on the ball. So I'm not it's not as big of a worry now that we've kind of done it a lot. But it's still different than just playing in your own home, you know, or at the Yos, you know, when the Mater makes like a big dinner and we all just hang out and there's no pressure at all.
Yep.
I'd be like, oh, I can just stop if I want, which never happens. But like, there's no pressure to like, you're not being forced.
There's definitely a difference between performing and jamming.
Yes, and they're both great in different ways too.
Yep.
Because like performing's really fun, especially when it goes well.
Yep.
But it's just a different. I guess it's just totally different. It's still that muscle memory, but I mean, we haven't done like a whole ton of it really either. I mean, we play in a lot of bars and stuff and just pub gigs, and those kind of feel like jamming. You know, because we're just hanging out. Really, like we can stop and take a bathroom break. It doesn't really matter. We're not like on stage being introduced. And
in a way, the fewer people, it's bizarre. The fewer people there are, the less you're getting paid. In some ways, the more fun you have.
Yeah.
Because there's just no pressure whatsoever.
Yeah.
Now, when you're in front of, because we had a handful of gigs that were ticketed.
Yeah.
Like Sanctuary was one of those. That was a fun one.
Yeah. Livery.
Yeah. And they feel so different than, they're like, we have a set, we stick to it, everybody has their parts, and it's so much different.
Well, and to kind of follow up on that, right? Because like everything we do has its own charm to it, right? So some guys I think feel like, by way of comparison, like bigger masses throughout the year, right? Bigger events throughout the year for a priest can get kind of, they feel sometimes formative and formulaic and just kind of stiff. But I'm like, but they have sort of a charm to it. In fact, like they show sort of like the universality of the church, but also really like just daily mass at like 8:30 in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning. It's just like, you know, the handful of like regular parishioners, and it's sort of intimate, and you know, preaching those are sort of fun to me. But also like preaching the bigger like Christmas, Easter are also kind of their own challenge. So my question, I guess, to kind of follow up is, you know, I can see for somebody who is probably like, you know, nervous about a recital, like a piano recital for the first time or something like that, right? But there's sort of maybe this, for lack of a better term, it's sort of like a high that you get from it. So like a runner's high, where it's like, you know, like there's a professionalism where like you get to craft a show, which is kind of cool.
And when it goes just right, it's just like the best feeling in the world.
So, you mentioned the fact that for you, giving a sermon is kind of your version of doing a solo.
Oh, yeah.
I thought that too, watching you preach. I'm like, I wonder if it's sort of the same as...
Oh, it 100% is. Yeah, 100% is. Yeah, it feels like you're finally like the whole band quiets down and you're like, okay, this is it. I'm gonna present something cool.
But I think there's actually a really meaningful similarity, which is that when you're doing a solo musically, there is an almost infinite number of ways, not infinite, but there's a large number of ways you can do it right. You know, there's a lot of possible notes that are going to fit.
I think I'd be a lot more nervous giving a homily, because at least if I play a wrong note, I'm not going to like...
hell,
yeah. But if I say something...
Rory's actually going to be burning after this.
But no,
so there's a little bit more pressure.
There's a little bit.
If you're giving a sermon, there's not infinite, but there's a lot of ways you can do it right.
Yes.
A lot of possible expressions you can use in words. It's like talking generally.
Right, but not every good preacher's the same.
But when you cross that line, there is actually definitively... There's like kind of a gray zone for both musical soloing and sermon soloing.
Oh,
like, you can say things ambiguously, you can make a jazzy note that's not really right or wrong.
Ooh, yeah.
And then occasionally, there's just simply... like there is an actual line where you are definitively wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
So there's the pressure of soloing and the pressure of giving a sermon, I imagine, are similar, where you're trying to...
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because it is true, because I think in both crafts, for lack of a better term, right, the crafting of a homily or the crafting of music, right, one of the ideas is sort of, I want to be able to charm the listener, right, and there's this great part of one of the prayers that Thomas Aquinas wrote, where he's like I want to be able to express myself with thoroughness and charm. Which sounds weird for someone like Thomas Aquinas, who wrote so much, right? And for anyone who reads him, he can feel very stiff and just very, very rigid and all that stuff. But he wants to be able to express himself in a way that charms the person who's reading it, and actually like makes their mind think of something greater and better, right? And there's aspects of preaching, I think, like that. But to my mind, dude, probably something about music in that regard too, right? Where like you want to be able to not just people to hear you, like it's not like you want people to sit back, hear your music, but like, you know what, they hit the notes correctly, and it did not feel painful. You want them to be almost kind of like, you want them tapping their foot. You want them to want to be able to sing. They want them to be able to sit there and be like, I wish I knew the lyrics so I could sing with them. Yeah. Right?
Unless there's like musicians in the crowd, most people are just going to be like, oh, this is fun.
Right.
We can tap our feet and dance to this. Maybe there's the occasional musician in the crowd that's like, oh, they played the wrong note technically on that.
Right.
You know? I wouldn't feel as nervous
still...
about that if I didn't do it.
No, I don't even... I'm not saying I'm nervous about it at all, but...
I will tell you this, the worst people to like preach with is priests and seminarians.
Oh, yeah.
They're the worst people to preach to. I did a talk here in maybe the next town over. And the pastor had invited me up to give like a mission night for the parish, for the men. And ordinarily, I mean, honestly, like, I've talked to groups of hundreds of people, and like it's like that, or like 3 people, like that, or conversations like this.
Yeah.
Where it's no different. But he was sitting there, and I'm like, oh, Christmas. Like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And suddenly, like, all the confidence just like gets sucked out the window. And I'm like, oh gosh, like this. My boss is sitting here.
The bishop was there.
Well, no, there was one time where when I was a deacon. And the first time is when you're a transitional deacon, so you spend like a year as a deacon. Nowadays it's like 6 months. But when I was still going through the system, it was a year as a deacon, and you'd spend a summer at a place as a deacon. And one of the first times you're really preaching. Right, you do talks outside of that, but now you're really preaching. I really enjoy preaching. I'm not sure if anyone enjoys my preaching, but I really enjoy it. And one time there was a Sunday where the bishop was saying the mass. It was somewhat random that he was saying the mass, and I was scheduled to preach. And so I thought, well, the rector of the cathedral was going to say either, well, he'll preach, or the bishop was going to preach. No, they said you're still going to preach, and I'm like.
I would have been so nervous.
Oh, it was terrible. Now, the bishop was very nice about it. He's a very pleasant man, so thanks be to God, he was very good about it. But I'm like, I am going to... Yeah, he's wonderful. Like, please don't fire me. No, it's okay. No, he genuinely is wonderful. He was very encouraging and all this other stuff. But of course, like, he's your boss. Like, you know, he's also an excellent preacher. So it's like, okay, not only was he just, not only someone like I genuinely admired and like a good guy and all this other stuff, but also, you know, he's your leader. Yeah. He's your boss.
You got to impress him.
Right. And he's also a good preacher himself. He can tell you what you did wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of this weird moment.
Well, a little constructive criticism is nice too. Like, even if we do know musicians that will critique things that we do, I'm like, oh, actually, I appreciate that because we don't really know what we're doing.
Well, okay, but here's the thing, right? Like, you say you don't know what you're doing, which I think is probably the ultimate, like, sort of test of humility, right? To really recognize what I don't know. And maybe to have sort of an awe before the craft. Like, I can probably sit here and tell you, I'm actually probably a pretty good bodrum player. Now, I can say that because I've met maybe, like, one other bodrum player in my whole life, right? And I really don't have I don't know the craft enough to be humble about it, right? For that, like I've sort of picked up the instrument maybe like 2-3 years ago, and I've played around with it, but I'm not like on your all levels of like playing where like it's a passion, it's a right, but you know, I was talking to a different priest friend of mine, and maybe this is a good way of explaining what I'm talking about. He's an Eastern Rite priest, wonderful guy. And I was telling him at one point in time, I said, you know, I don't yet love your liturgy. He said, he was surprised by this because I would show up at the Divine Liturgy all the time, right, in this Melkite church. And I would show up all the time because I was really fascinated by it. And he kind of like was taken aback, and I said, no, so you don't understand, Father. I said, I lust after it, but I don't love it yet. I don't know it in its complexity enough to truly love it. I just think it's fun and interesting. Like, when I play with you all, like, it's fun and interesting, but I don't know it like you guys know it.
That's how I felt taking college-level calculus. Because at first I was like, what on earth is this?
Right.
And then I'm like, wow, this is so, like, math is so much more complicated than you can even realize. And I think that's why they had the program I was in. I think that's why they had us take it, because they're just like, we just want you to know how much there is out there. We just want to know how much you don't know.
Yeah, we just want you to feel stupid for like one semester, and then you can go back.
It turns out it's a lot. Yeah. And like, so I learned just enough to realize how complicated math can be, but I was like, just give me the...
It's a very painful thing for me whenever I have to engage with somebody who is trying to basically show me what I'm doing wrong. Like, it's a very
What do you mean? Does it like bother you, or?
It does, but only for, like, I know it's just immaturity essentially.
Yeah. Oh, like you don't like criticism.
Does anyone like criticism?
Well,
yeah, but
it's not. Like, it's not comfortable.
No, exactly. Yeah. Like, it's something that you need.
Yeah.
And even that you know that you.
I think in the music world, it's like crucial.
Yeah. So like every time that someone's kind of taken me aside and I'm like, okay, like, almost always they're not so bad, you know? Right. But it's like every time it's kind of like, screw you.
But they're trying to help you.
Yeah, exactly. At the same time, you're kind of like, I know I need this.
Unless they're just trying to be egotistical. Some people are that way too.
No, most people, like, especially in the folk world, I think most people aren't.
Yeah.
But it's just, to get to that point, like, why does that strike us so harshly? Right? Like, if someone were to critique my liturgical way of doing things, which for some people may just sound like, well, it's that, or it's a math problem, right? Or that, like, I'm like, well, okay, but they're not critiquing like where I put the shredder in my office, right? They're talking about
something that it's really important to you.
Right, something that I am
So
in a real way, right? Like I like this,
Yeah.
in Catholic priest world, we say, do the red, say the black, but in the real way, we also say you need to like do the black, right? You like the words you say, take, eat, this is my body, right?
Yeah.
The priest ought to really mean that. So liturgy is not something that's like separated from me. It's really very personal. It's like
Yeah, that's funny you say that, because like when I lived with Dan, Dan over in Maine, he would always critique my cooking, and I don't like cooking's just kind of fun. It's like a hobby. I don't really live to do it. So when he would do it, I'd be like, oh well, he probably knows the right way to do this, because obviously like he's way better at than me. So I wouldn't really take it personally. I would actually be like, I would love it when he critiqued anything I did.
Right, but I imagine if someone came up to you and said like, "Can I give you some pointers on the violin?" You'd be like, "Okay, dude, pace yourself."
I would listen.
Right?
Yeah,
No, sure you would, but I feel like to some degree it's like kind of to David's point, right? Like I feel like it would be potentially a sensitive area, maybe.
It wouldn't tick me off. It really wouldn't.
Wow.
Because I
Maybe
mean,
you're just more humble than both
well,
of us.
I'm just arrogant. I'm gonna do it the way I want.
I have no intention of growing.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it the way I want anyway. But if it's like good advice, then sure. I mean, depending on who's giving it to, if it's like Yo-Yo Ma, then or something like that, then I'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll hold the bow this way. And I'll be like, okay, but I don't know. I don't really take it that personally.
Right.
Yeah. No, I think it's the more. To me, the thing that makes it hard is when you wrap up your identity.
Yeah.
In a particular, I don't know. When part of your value that you see in yourself is how well you do this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's again, it's kind of like that's not the point of doing the thing.
Right.
But
right.
That's the kind of thing you have to keep reminding yourself.
And again, good point, because like I think of priests who lose their ministry because of like health reasons, right? And now ultimately we're called to be priests, to be identifying ourselves with Christ, right? But we can't identify, and we sort of exercise that by our ministry to other people, right? But the goal for us is to be united to Christ, and sometimes ministry gets, for lack of a better term, it can get in the way, right? So we got to make sure we're men of prayer, right? We're men of like almost, for lack of a better term, solitude with the Lord, primarily. But I can see too maybe kind of your point a little bit and critique, tell me if I'm wrong here, where it's like you will lose your craft and you will lose your ability to charm your congregation, your listeners, if you get out of touch with what the music is, right?
Yeah.
Like if the quality of your recordings drop or the excitement sort of goes down.
Yep.
Like I'm no longer interested in like, I love the way we did this chord progression as opposed to this, or I found this right way of doing, whatever, or I found this lyric that just, man, that hit home, right? If you lose that love, there's something like maybe it sort of becomes functionary maybe.
Yeah, I've been afraid of that a little bit once in a while, because now we do it a lot, and I'm like, what if we get to that point where it's not exciting anymore? And I don't think it'll ever happen.
The cool thing about music is, like, when I was first picking up guitar at Thomas More, and I had like 8 people showing me different things, I would get to the point, because in the folk world, most songs are 3 chords, and then the other are 4 chords, and maybe a handful. Like, it's all very simple, right? And so I would keep getting to this point where I'd be kind of like, well, I know how to do,
Right.
most of this Irish kind of style stuff chordally. And then I'd be like, well, I'm getting kind of bored. And then suddenly you discover, like there's this dudette here, and there's this thing you can do here for a solo or whatever. But the point is that music, it's a lot like theology. It's very dynamic. You're never at the bottom of it.
Yeah.
There's always another place to go.
There is. You can get into a rut, but but you also can never stop learning, which is one of the best things about it.
Well, you brought up an interesting thing that has fascinated me for a little while too. We talked about this the other night. This is more of a personal theory, so I'm still kind of working out through some of the kinks and the details of it. but also that tells you something, right? That like I'm still at least mildly engaged in my craft, right? At least mildly. I think I'm still one of the caller. Okay, yeah, I'm at least mildly engaged in my craft still, right? That it's still fascinating. I'm still trying to come up with theories, but it's the ability to become bored with it, so that you can actually start doing. So like there was this interesting argument a little while ago that said one of the things that happened like with cell phones, right? So like we all have these in our pockets now, right? Is we no longer have the ability to become bored. So the example was, you're at a restaurant with a friend of yours. They get up to use the restroom. You immediately pull out your phone and start either texting somebody or you're checking your message or you're doing whatever, fill in the blank, right? And they said we've lost the ability to become bored. It's not a critique of Peter, who's on his phone right now, right? who's very patiently being with us.
He's gonna listen to us.
Oh my gosh! If ever there was a time to pull out your phone, stop watching this and get to your phone. But that ability to become bored with it is really good. I remember talking to a friend of mine. They had changed sort of like the regular rituals that they were going to, so they went from like the order form to something else. And they mentioned that they sort of had plateaued, that it wasn't like as interesting at first. I said, good. That's where you want to be. Yeah. The day you get bored with it is the day you're becoming familiar with it, which means you can go to the next deeper level, the next level you need to get to, right? But you don't get there unless you get bored, right? For lack of a better term.
I've said it before, but you have peaks and valleys. Sometimes you're just in a valley and you're like, I have no creative inspiration right now at all. And every time that happened years ago, I'd always be like, oh wow, am I tired of music? Do I not want to do it anymore? Do I lose my creativity? And then as soon as you're in a valley, you're just a peak's going to happen soon. Like one gig's going to go great. And like you're going to come up with all this new stuff.
My keys are stabbing my leg here. Forgive me.
But there is kind of a cycle. Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
And forgive me for doing this, but I think it's maybe helpful maybe for people who are watching this. One of the things the reason why I asked you guys to do this was kind of to start drawing these kind of comparisons. That anything that's good naturally participates in the goodness of God, and you're going to see comparisons and things to do it right. What you just described there was exactly Ignatius's rules of discernment of spirits. Oh. Like he talks about there is highs and lows, like consolation and desolation. And one of the things you need to remember is you just said it like perfectly. I forget, it's rule like 13 or something like that. No, it was it's earlier. It's like rule like 6 or 7, where he says, remember that in the times of desolation, that there's a consolation coming soon. Yeah. Right? When you feel distant from God, that consolation is soon going to arrive, right? And it's like, and one of the other things was you mentioned like, what was it? Am I done with music? And one of the things he says, it's rule number 5. I remember this particularly. He says, in times of desolation, when you hit those valleys, don't make a change. Yeah. Right? And so there's interesting things that anytime we ultimately have anything that's good, true, and beautiful, right? It naturally participates in the goodness of God, and it will excite the mind in the same way that something good, right? Like when I'm with you all, and you guys are playing, right? I don't particularly care what we're doing. Like if we're just if it's boiling hot out, right? If we're enjoying something, if it's been a good day, a bad day, by the time you guys are done playing, it's always a good day.
It is fun,
right? Yeah. And it's always good just to enjoy your like. I remember, I think I went down for St. Patrick's Day. Was it last weekend? I think it was. So like one of the days of that weekend last year, it was down when you guys were at the sanctuary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it was a long day, and I remember I got down there, and I was like, I didn't realize how far it was from where I was. And I was like, this is way longer, and I'm out way later than I need to be. But I remember getting through.
We're always dragging you to things like that.
But it was so good. It was just so uplifting because you guys were. It was just again. Ordinarily, I particularly enjoy it when I'm playing with you. But I was just watching you guys play, and I think because you guys had this natural and good and enjoyable way of doing it, that it was just like you there was something. For lack of a term, naturally refreshing, if you will. Maybe almost supernaturally refreshing because it participated in something that was good and true and beautiful.
Whenever we look out and see people we know, I always feel a lot more at
ease. It was a big morale booster.
Yeah. Nice.
Plus we got a priestly blessing right before.
Yeah. At the time, you got remember when I showed up?
Oh yeah.
Oh wow, that's nice. Okay.
Yeah, in the back room there.
Also, can I just say, it was funny when I walked in because I was dressed like that. I was dressed like a priest. There was a lot of funny things that happened that day.
In Maynard, Massachusetts.
Right, Maynard, Mass. And I walked in, and they almost immediately assumed I was part of the band. And I was like, I'm not, but thank you though. Like I appreciate the
think you're
vote of
wearing a
confidence.
costume.
They're like, oh, this guy's like playing a part. I'm like, no, I'm.
Well, it's a church,
I'm actually
too.
a priest. Yeah,
It's an old church building.
Yep.
It used to be a church.
It
yeah.
was fun. That was a fun gig though. You guys, that was a beautiful gig.
That was a good time.
That was
pictures
our
right there, actually.
Oh, that is up there.
Yeah, right there on the wall.
That was our. Is that still our biggest gig to date? Probably. Because the B&H
I
stage was-
want to say probably.
Yeah.
But you guys are coming soon to the B&H stage in Concord.
We
right?
are actually on March 16th.
March 16th.
Tickets are on sale right
so
now.
if this comes out
Please
before
buy
March
them.
16th, what?
They go up in price at the door, so you're better off to buy them now.
Yep.
Yeah,
Sad,
Yeah, do
but
that.
also good.
Also good.
they're very reasonable. I think $15. So
dang.
Yep.
What?
15 and then a
I
$2.
think we just made our first
Tax
shameless
or
plug in the
something.
podcast.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm all about shameless plugs, right? I'm all about it.
Right. If you're trying to sell hair regaining merchandise,
Don't
please-
even bother.
Please contact
That was
me.
beautiful. I'm not even gonna say it.
Our hair people were late today.
Our hair people
And our
were
makeup
late
crew.
today.
Yeah.
Ordinarily, I have a piece I wear.
Typical makeup crew.
Okay, so totally an aside. This has nothing to do with our conversation. Someone at one point legitimately turned to me because I have been balding since I was in my 20s at least. So when I turned 21, 20, whatever it was, it was like obviously I was starting to bald,
Yep.
right? I knew to have this really beautiful head of hair back in the day, and it's not even shameless. It's just actually true, right? And I remember but again, this was like 5 years into this, and I was like 25ish in and thereabouts. And one guy legitimately turns to me. I mean, the joke in the seminary was that I'm balding, right? Like, that was the joke, right? This guy legitimately turns to me and says, you should buy a hairpiece, like a toupee, right? And I'm like, okay, how is that going to go down? So for the last, 5 years, I've been balding, but then suddenly I
That's
have
what I've
hair.
wondered about those. Yeah,
I'm
like
so no
it's
one's
obvious.
gonna put two and two together.
Yeah.
Suddenly I just have a lot of hair again. But I did think it would be worth it for one reason, and for one reason only. I would wear it with absolute seriousness for one solid year. Like when somebody asked me about it, with absolute seriousness. And then I'd wait for the day, after that 1 year mark, then I'd wait for the day when someone tells me, I'm sitting in the office someday, I can picture it now, I'm sitting in the parish office, someone gets up from their desk and says, hey, I'm going out, I'm going to get a haircut. I take it off, I throw it to them, and I say, get me one while you're out. And that's it. It's a 1 year build up for a one-time joke.
worth it.
Yeah, I think it would be. I absolutely think it would be worth that joke.
It'd be funny if you got a totally unnatural hair color too, like red or something.
Get a blonde, like mullet.
Bleach blonde, long hair or something.
Exactly.
No, it's natural.
They'd
Exactly.
be like, you were bald, but now it must be real, I guess.
Luscious locks of just. I also feel like you just get like one of those those cheap Halloween ones where it's obvious, it shimmers, it's super you can tell it's just plastic, right?
I want to get the Art Garfunkel.
It must be itchy.
Yes. Oh yeah, exactly. Oh, those things are super itchy. Someone just put one on my head a while ago. They're super uncomfortable.
Oh, you ever hear that band Krungbin? I think I've shown you them.
What is it?
Krungbin or Krungbin? They always wear the wigs.
Really?
And I always thought it was their real hair.
Oh.
And they look Mexican or something, you know? I was like, oh wow, this is like an authentic.
Yeah.
Their music sounds really Mexican. And,
Yeah.
And then I see there's only one picture on the internet where they're not wearing the wigs, and they're just white people from Texas. And I was like, these wigs were fake the whole time, and they wear them because I guess they would put them on so that they could get through the crowd or whatever without being harassed or something.
So here's the question: Kiss, the band,
Oh.
is their hair real? It's got to be wigs.
I don't know. They are pretty old.
Well,
Probably
yeah.
back in the day it was real.
Maybe.
Must have been.
But I was shocked the day I found out that Bon Jovi was originally a hair band. I did not know.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know why I didn't.
Oh, my gosh.
I think I'd only seen later pictures of John Bon Jovi.
Really?
And I did not know. I mean, I knew the music. I knew the original
Oh, you've
music.
seen the music videos, right?
Well, I don't think I had ever seen it. When I finally watched the music videos, I was like, wait a minute, hold on. They were a hair band? I was like,
Oh, yeah.
It's like, what?
Dude, freaking Bon Jovi's dad was a what do they call it? Barber, hairdresser.
Oh, really?
Really?
And he would do Bon Jovi's hair for his
That's hilarious.
teenage gigs. Yeah.
Wow.
Sorry, but can I ask you guys a question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I use the bathroom?
Oh,
We
yeah,
can take
I
a
guess
short
so.
break. How about that? Yeah.
Speaking of confessions, what is your deepest, darkest secret? No. No, stop going on. No,
I'm wearing a hairpiece.
I am actually bald.
Whoa!
Sad. I'm cold.
No, my actual question was...
It's not a question, Father. That's a cough.
It is a cough.
I'm so sorry.
Be an adult. Be better, okay? Be better.
I'll confess later.
Oh my gosh. No, you obviously like. There's a lot. There's the songs on your albums that you've done. I think especially the Sea Shanty album, where like there's a lot of, other people have done them. They're common. What is it? Open source or whatever it is. Like so. But there's also a lot of songs you guys have personally written. Not only just instrumental pieces, but also a lot of lyric based things. There's a couple ones like. The last Pickpocket Road, the actual song Pickpocket Road on the album Pickpocket Road, is a really funny story.
Yeah.
But you also have some sort of sentimental ones, right? So you described a couple of them that were like a little more on the personal side. But for the sake of the fact that I'm a priest and we got to do the Christian Catholic thing on the odd occasion, just to like justify that this is actually working, I can count these as business miles coming up here.
We'll have our people write you.
Look at it.
You have a punch card?
Did you validate your parking? Two songs in particular I wanted to talk about. One, Scholastica, and I read it before. What's the name of it? No, the Hope Beyond It All. Hope Beyond It All on two pairs of on the album Two Pairs of Eyes. And also kind of want to talk about Two Pairs of Eyes a little bit. So. Can you tell me a little bit, any one of the, start wherever you want, either Scholastica, Two Pairs of Eyes, or...
Scholastica's feast day is in about 4 days right now.
Oh, it is coming up, yeah. It's the day after
so,
my sister's birthday. So, happy birthday to Callie.
Yeah, we should start with Scholastica. But, so, that was written on the feast day of St. Scholastica.
Oh, okay.
And this is back when I was teaching in Idaho. And, I was hanging out with my brother, and it was just kind of a slow day, nothing really going on. It was dark because it was February and it was always dark. And I thought, oh, it's the Feast of Saint Scholastica, and I'm Benedictine. So I was like, this should be a big day, And I was like,
what do you mean you're Benedictine? I'm sorry.
So I'm an oblate.
Oh, that's right. You're an oblate. Oh, yeah.
So not a monk, but yeah.
I forgot. Forgive me.
Okay, no, but I kind of thought, what can I do? And I was like, there's only one story that I was aware of with Saint Scholastica, and that is the story of Benedict and Scholastica as their final meeting. It's the story that the song tells. But I'd been to Subiaco, and I'd been to both the Subiaco monastery that St. Benedict founded and the one down the hill that Scholastica founded.
Oh, nice.
It's a relatively short walk. I forget how long it is, maybe 20 minutes or so. So I had that memory in my head, and I had the story in my head. And the way I wrote it out was it's an odd song, like the meter doesn't really hold, but I really do feel like she had a hand in that, because it's not even the way that I would normally write a song. It just kind of like happened, and then I stapled it together at the end of it. I think I had to go back and do a little bit of editing because I had to look up the original story. I think it's by Gregory the Great. Wrote like a.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
It's in our breviary, and we read it every year. I just forget who wrote it.
No, it's a great story, and it always reminded me of my relationship with my sister, because we had a similar. She and I would just stay up late in the night. We wouldn't talk about theology, but we talk about books and stuff.
What is the synopsis of Scholastica's story, just so in case someone isn't...
Yeah. So it's the last time they meet. They don't know it at the time, but it's the last time they meet. And they had a tradition that I think it was every year. I believe it was on her birthday. They would get together, because she ran what's a female convent? I guess?
Convent, yeah.
She ran a convent right down the hill from his monastery. And so naturally they couldn't see each other all the time, because they had a bunch of stuff going on, and you can't, even if you're brother and sister, it's kind of like you're in a male monastery, you're a female monastery, there's not too much cross-pollination.
Yes. For what hopefully should be obvious reasons.
Yes. So they would meet up once a year. They kind of compromised, and they would meet up and just talk about theology and talk about prayer and just catch up. And so they were doing that, and Scholastica, like a typical sister, didn't want it to end, and Benedict said, I've got to get home, I've got abboting to do.
Right.
And she goes, okay, I guess, and then she kind of prays and says, it turns out in the story, this doesn't come up in the song, I don't think. In the story, I think she just prays for God to do something to keep him there. And God sends this giant rainstorm. And so Benedict, and apparently it was a pretty wild rainstorm, because, you think rain, big deal. But apparently it was torrential downpour. And so Benedict goes, okay, fine, this torrential downpour happened out of the blue, right? You wanted me to stay here. I get it, God. And then they stay up all night talking, and then he goes back at the end of the day. And then I think it's 3 days later, he sees this dove flying from the tower of her convent in the sky, and he goes, oh, that's my sister, she's dead. And everyone kind of goes, what? He's like, yeah. And then they check up and it's like, oh yeah, she died. So, yeah.
Also, that totally sounds like something my sister would do.
I think it's a
She'd be
very
like,
Italian thing.
I'm gonna
yeah.
pray to God so that you can change your plans, basically.
There are certain women who I feel like God kind of does the man thing.
Oh,
like, when they ask for
100%.
things, he's just like, okay, you get a pass on this one.
Okay, no problem.
Yep. Which
Okay, that's really cool. That's really cool. Because, like, the song has sort of a gentleness about it, which I always appreciated. It sort of feels like I don't know. Well, it's not remorseful, right? But it's sort of almost mournful in its way that says, like, we're talking about something somber here, right? Yep. So, one other question for kind of maybe both of you, well, I have a lot of questions, but one of the other questions would be, when you guys are writing a piece, is it always lyrics first, then music? Or is it music then lyrics? Is it like do you kind of wrestle that one out?
It's always different. If David Counts writes the song, it's usually lyrics first, isn't it?
Yep.
And all the ones that I ever write, it's just music. I don't write really hardly any lyrics. I'll usually come to David and I'll be like, hey, I came up with this thing. This chord progression or something.
I was talking to the wrong thing the entire time.
Yeah, your microphone's sinking there. But I'll come to David and I'll be like, hey, can you come up with some lyrics for this chord progression or this song or this melody? And he'll go like, oh yeah, give me like an hour, and he'll like go in his room, come back out with this all handwritten lyrics.
Yep.
So and they'll just work. Yeah.
There are 2 songs on the upcoming album, the one after the sea shanty album, that you wrote the melody for, and he basically just sat down and like layered all the instruments and basically had most of the track ready to go by the time we needed lyrics.
Yeah.
So we don't have the names guaranteed for either of them yet, but
no.
That's a different style for me. So that's definitely, I would say when we do it that way, no matter what happens, that's your song, because the words.
Well, I mean, you wrote the
matching.
lyrics, you know.
To me, it's what goes first that really defines whose song it is.
Oh yeah.
Because like if you do the musical part and I basically riff lyrics over the top of that, then the lyrics are kind of secondary fundamentally. Like with the one that we're calling it Westward Drive for the time being. It's I thought it was almost like a soundtracky kind of vibe. It's a very upbeat.
Yeah, that was a fun song to make. That was when you were in Idaho for Christmas break for 10 days. I was here by myself for 10 days. And I told myself, I'm going to work really hard on music. And on the 9th day, I was like, wow, I haven't done anything. And I sat down and just did the whole thing in like 2 hours. It's just weird how it works that way sometimes.
Yep.
But anyway, not to interrupt you.
No, but like when you give me those things and you want lyrics for them, to me the song's already written. It's just me having to find out what the lyrics are. Like the lyrics are kind of already married.
They're a big part of the song, though.
Yeah. No, yeah, I know what you mean. Like,
yeah.
And we've had a few songs together. What's the one I'm thinking of?
Western Rising.
Western Rising.
Yeah.
Which was similar, because you and I kind of worked out. You had that fiddle riff.
Yeah.
For like a year before we ever tried to
something
write
like
words
that.
for it.
Yeah.
So by the time I actually got around to trying to write words for it, it was already kind of like ingrained into both of us.
We had been jamming it at some gigs.
Yeah.
It was like a pre-version of it. It wasn't.
Yep. That you came up with that at Reedsboro. It was the Reedsboro.
Yeah.
Jam. Yes, it was. He came up with the riff for Western Rising at our first ever.
We called it the Reedsboro Jam
Yeah.
for a while, because we didn't know what to call it.
Dang.
Yeah,
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it's. But generally speaking, like this next album is going to be really interesting because we're going to have songs by like the first album I think is you had "Let Me Drive," which is one instrumental piece.
Yeah, you wrote most of the music.
I think I wrote everything but Pickpocket Road, and there was one other one.
Andre helped us write Pickpocket Road.
Yeah.
Yep.
I guess I could see it kind of has an Andre sort of touch to it.
Yeah, we
So
were
I
all
should
just brainstorming in the basement there in Maine when we lived there. It was kind of fun.
Yeah. So Andre will have 2 songs on this next album.
Oh, really?
So yeah. So we're trying to get kind of more lyrical range.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We put one song on 2 Pairs of Eyes, Up to Much, is written by Johnny, my brother.
Oh, it's a great song.
Yeah, no, it's really sad because it gets very little traction on Spotify. Apparently, Apple Music
Yeah, Father Kyle really liked it actually when we were hanging out.
It's a great
up
song.
there.
But
Can I ask you about that one? I know I had a question about this one, but I am curious because one, when you say it's written by Johnny, like it almost kind of makes sense because it's not outside, but it's like it seems like it's outside of what you guys would normally do.
Yeah.
It's arguably my favorite track on the new album. Like it's one of the few ones I will go back over and like I constantly listen to. There was a couple of songs I was listening to recently, and like I would add it to like my queue so that I would like immediately play it on my Spotify.
I love that song.
Oh yeah, it's great. And I like if my voice was better, I would love to be able to sing that at some point.
Oh, doing it live, like as a 3-piece, if you did it with the three of us, that'd be really cool.
We should try when we're done here.
We might
so
try
while
that.
The mics are still up.
Yeah.
We can do it right now if you want. But.
Well, I might have. We might do that. But question, before we do that though, tell me this. Because I have theories about it. Because I mean, like, again, I don't know that this is always true. And again, but things that speak about what is good, true, and beautiful naturally touch people and charm the heart to see what you're seeing, right? So I love when like a homily works and someone gets what I'm getting at, even though what they're getting out of it is completely different from what I got or the reason why I was saying what I was saying. But they got something unique and beautiful, which tells me Holy Spirit is doing something here, right? The Holy Spirit knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
And so, like, when I'm hearing that, right? Yeah, we'll tell me the lyrics, right? Like, I want to say thanks for the call. It's good to have
a reminder.
Yeah, exactly. Good amount of goodwill, right? And it has this sort of loneliness to it.
Yep.
And I'm just like, wow, I can hear someone who maybe was depressed in this, like, right? There was a sense of like depression, but like, but I want to say thanks for the call. Like, there was this point of like, but it's not hopeless.
Yep.
It's not completely without hope, right? It recognizes that there's a sense of like, right? There's like, yeah, there's a valley, right? Like there's people who are like really struggling, and like, I can see this as someone who's like encouraging people like to take care of other people in ministry. It's like sometimes a phone call is exactly what people need to hear.
Yep.
You just need to know that somebody cares at all, right? Like as the song says, right? Like, so I don't know, but is there other aspects of the song that I'm missing that like?
Well, there's one funny backstory to it, which is he got the one line. So he wrote the song years ago. He wrote it, I want to say, back in like 2018, 19. And we were singing it together for a friend of ours, George Watson. He was a teacher friend of mine back in Idaho, like a guy probably in his 60s or so. And we get done with the song, and the first line was not, I want to say thanks for the call. It was something completely different. And George goes, I like that first line. I want to say thanks for the call.
Yeah.
Johnny goes, okay, and then that became the line.
That's funny.
That happens a lot to Johnny.
That's how Bonnie Green Boat.
Exactly, yeah. And so there's
Which
a song
is gonna
on the
be on
sea
the-
shanty album that Johnny wrote.
Yeah.
And he wrote it because he misheard me singing a Scottish folk song.
Yeah.
And he goes, I like that song, My Bonnie Green Boat. And I'm like, Johnny, those aren't the words. And that's not the melody.
Accidentally wrote a song.
He accidentally.
Talk about a unique kind of selective hearing. My gosh.
Johnny's a different bird. He's a different kind of critter. But yeah, so Johnny's kind of.
That's your twin.
That's my twin brother. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's an engineer, so he doesn't need as much human interaction as most people, I think. I don't mean that as an insult. He's an engineer, like you know, but he does need it, and he's he lives one of the loneliest lifestyles of any of my friends because all of our friends left Idaho.
Oh wow!
All of them, including me.
Yeah.
Why?
Wait a minute! This is not Idaho.
Yeah. Where am I?
It's news to me.
Yeah, so like all of his high school friends left, all of his college friends left, and so he's a stay-at-home kind of guy, and he finally came out and visited New Hampshire for about 3 weeks back in November. That's why he's on the sea shanty.
That was a fun time.
That was great, and he loved it, and I'm kind of slowly reeling him in. So,
yeah.
So that song is.
Well, it's easy to
His
have.
microphone's not in the way of his face, right? On the camera. I'm sure it's not
I think we're good.
blocking his face.
Yeah, it's good.
Oh,
The nice thing about having him here
Put it a
is
touch lower would be good, I think. We'll just push it.
we're only supposed to have 2 people living here and 2 cars parked here, but luckily they're twins. So as long
no one
as
can tell the difference.
as long as nobody sees them both in the same place at the same time, it's
For legal
essentially the
purposes,
same
that's a
joke.
joke. There was no one here.
For legal purposes, that is a joke.
Yes.
Yeah. But if he moved here, that would be cool. That would be. And he works remotely, so he totally could.
Yeah, we'll play by ear.
We should talk to him about that.
Yeah. But again, kind of like an interesting connection between like sort of like the for lack of a better term, the eternal qualities of good things, right? That anything that's ultimately good has sort of an eternal quality to it. That it's always going to be pointing out something unique. Like one of the things I appreciate about like a good piece of art is that you can stare at it for hours and still get something good out of it. Something unique out of it almost every single time, right?
Yeah.
There's this quality to music, to art in general, right? That speaks to the goodness of God. Like I was telling this to someone a while ago. I said, look at the scientist who was incredibly excited about some sort of, like, Neil deGrasse Tyson's probably a good example of this. The guy genuinely loves talking about all this scientific stuff, right? And he genuinely enjoys it, right? But again, go right back to what we would say as Christians and Catholics, right? We'd say, look, if God is all truth, so it's naturally participating in the goodness of God, which should elicit joy, right? When you start being able to understand things to a new level, and art should be in a similar way, right? An expression of what it means to be thoroughly human, but to be the most human you can be starts dipping towards the divine.
Yeah.
Naturally, in this beautiful way. So, just maybe one last thing, because I know I don't want to make this terribly long, but I don't care how long it is, I guess, to some degree.
We got a few more hours.
Yeah, I'd say at least 2. I do have work in the morning, so I should probably get going soon. But what role, and I guess the question for both of you, I will kind of like the answer for both of you on this one. What role does your faith play in this? Because you're not writing Christian songs for the sake of argument, right? It's not like you're writing praise and worship music or anything like that. So, what role does your faith play if you were to talk about this? Because you can see where people's maybe lack of faith, or even in some darker renditions of that, have played in some people's music, like they've come through the major medias, right? And you can see how draining they are of people's lives.
Smells like Teen Spirit.
Yeah, sort of, right? Yeah. So I'm kind of curious how you would answer that. What role does your faith play in these in writing music, performing music, fill in the blank?
I would say probably just, I mean, you're right, our music isn't necessarily faith.
It's not anti-Christian by any stretch, right? It's not
but we don't want
sinful,
it to. We want it to have a good place in the middle where we can play our music anywhere, and people can look more into it if they want and find out what it's about, but also just enjoy it. And not that you can't enjoy Christian music or anything, but it's we both kind of said, we both kind of agreed, or at least I'm pretty sure we have, that we basically just want the band to kind of just be about the music. Yeah. And then the faith can be in the lyrics, and obviously it's very the music is Catholic. I mean, you listen to the lyrics. Right. Not every song, obviously, Nothing New But Drink is purely a drinking song.
Well, it's also very Catholic.
It's also very Catholic.
Actually, yeah.
It's not un-Catholic.
But yeah, I mean, our music, it can be enjoyed by everybody, but also it's, if people want to pay more attention to looking into the lyrics, they can actually find out, these guys are Catholic.
But even this dude, the song Nothing to But Drink, right? You guys aren't promoting drunkenness, right? You're not really it's the equivalent of same level to Drunken Sailor, right? It's it's not let's go out and let's do horrible things, right? You're saying no, it's like a drunken sailor.
It's a communal thing.
The story ends with a husband and wife reunited. Yeah, and with the guy reunited with the lady.
Yeah, so it actually
it's a healing.
I guess even that song has.
It's really about family and the healing of family.
It's all about drinking.
But it feels like Drunken Sailor. It's in the same way. But go ahead.
So there's a lot of I'm glad that we didn't talk much about the podcast before we started, because this is a perfect example. That question actually kind of ironically caught me by surprise, because it's so easy. Yeah. It's such an obvious question. But I think the way to answer it, because we agreed that the main purpose of the band is essentially, if you subordinate the music to the message, you've kind of lost the plot in a certain sense. Yeah. And there are a lot of songs we do that have very explicit Christian messages. Yes. And there are a lot of songs we do that have more subtle Christian messages. Probably Let It Blow Over is a little bit more like that. Yeah. And then you have songs like Nothing to Do But Drink, or Down Down Rollickin', or whatever, Willow Grove, and they're just songs. But the whole point for me is that we're in the folk tradition.
Yeah.
By and large, like Two Pairs of Eyes is our one rock song we do. The second album, you mentioned a few songs not really fitting the vibe. And that was kind of intentional. We established ourselves in Pickpocket Road. And we said, this is a good sound, this is consistent, this is very much original songs in the folk tradition. And the second album was much more like, okay, now that we're stabilized, how far can we push this? Where is our edge?
Yeah.
And so between those two albums is right now kind of our comfort zone. Yeah. We can push it further if we want to.
Right.
But for my mind, my sister loved one of Chesterton's quotes about songs, and he said something along the lines of, fishermen didn't write fishing songs because they were trying to convince other people to become fishermen. You know, they did it because that was what they did. It permeated their entire. That was their lives. There's a livelihood.
Yeah.
They wrote songs about it because it was what was around them.
Yeah.
And to me, in the folk world's a lot like that, where the Irish tradition in particular, to a lesser extent the English and the Scottish kind of, but the Irish is especially where we come from. Irish and American are kind of our two core root sources for songwriting. And the Irish were, in some ways, obnoxiously Catholic. You know, like it was wrapped up with their national identity, it was wrapped up with their cultural identity. But you listen to their songs and they'll name drop the Angelus Bell, they'll name drop Mass, they'll name drop Father Flaherty or whatever.
Right.
But fundamentally, it's not that they're trying to promote the faith, generally speaking, but they are doing it.
Yes. Because we'll do songs like our Advent songs.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, yeah, like a Christmas song is a great example.
Which are insanely very Catholic songs.
Yeah.
You know?
I think we could say the difference is we want to be Catholic, and we don't want to be shy about the fact that we're Catholic, but we're not proselytizing.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it's just, and
we're just doing what we do.
And if you are proselytizing, like if you are a Christian folk band, I'm not aware of any of them.
Right.
But if you are, then God bless you. Like, do what you're gonna do. But
it's
just not our mission. So,
yeah.
Well, there's something really good. I mean, there's a lot of good things you're saying, but there's something. What did St. John say in his letters? He says the way we know that someone is in Christ, is a member of Christ's body, is to conduct himself in just the manner he was. Yeah. Right. And there is something about that, right? Like
because like we'll have you bless our instruments before a gig, and like everybody will see that, you know, and it's
exactly
we're not thinking about it, but
like you don't make a point that like I show up to a gig to help out
for show. We're just doing it like it's what we do. Yeah.
Right.
Now, because I am Irish Catholic, sometimes I do like doing it for show.
Well, fair enough, because. But like, but this point where it's like, as a priest, right? I show up just as a priest, but like, one of the things that's like, I mean, again, part of me's like that's free advertising for me, but
people
like
love
wherever
it too.
I go, well, yeah, but also like, part of me's also kind of like, to some degree, it's if I took off my collar, that would be more fake.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like I would be selling you a product if I took my collar off.
Yes.
Yep. And I would be basically like, well, I'm lying to you, like I'm trying to sneak around outside of my priesthood as if I could really even do that. And I'm like, that would be more inauthentic to me than actually just wearing my collar.
It's crazy to see people's reactions too, because like you either have people that are like, oh wow, Catholic priests going out and having fun playing music, right? Like that's totally normal. Then you have the people that are like, oh, it's a costume or something,
right? Yeah, exactly. I definitely got that one time where I was at one of your it wasn't a gig, it was actually a little something else, but I walked up to the counter to pay my bill, and guys hunched over, standing there, and I just kind of like must be like people sitting all over the place, and I was just trying to talk to the person there, and so I'm waiting for them to give me my card back, my credit card back, whatever it was. And the guy looks over at me, he says, are you really a priest? And I said, yeah, I am. And he grunts. And then just goes back to whatever he was doing. And I'm like, okay, well, whatever. A little while later, he yells across from, like I was outside, like it was like outside dining, so I'm like outside, and like the guy's like easily like 10 feet away from me, and he yells, doesn't come close to me, right? Doesn't like come like this like to have a conversation. He yells across, apologizing, and it's like then he wants to have a conversation from like 10 feet away. I'm like, dude, I'm not gonna bite. I might, but I don't think I'm gonna bite today, right? Like, come on. So
I think that's kind of the beauty of doing it the way we do it too. We're just living the way we're living, and our music is what it is, and people will be curious about it because they see a group of people that are young and they're into the music, and they bring their priest friends to their gigs, and it'll kind of just happen naturally. People will be curious.
Oh, sure.
This really gets to me the question of what do you want? What's the point of the music? Like really, like what is the point of music? You know, because like in the folk world, you got your Billy Braggs, and if you listen to most of his songs, the point is obviously to basically keep up the morale of socialists and communists, and that's very much like a Northern England folk singer-songwriter approach to what the music is trying to do.
Sure.
You know, and then there's a lot of, I think most Christian rock, which I don't know that world very well, so I don't want to speak too badly about it. But it seemed, from what little I know, it seems like the point is to spread the Christian message.
Sure,
and music,
absolutely,
and music
right,
in a second, right?
Yeah.
And I don't. Faith is very important to us, like it is.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's. And not everyone in the band's Catholic, by the way.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
Most of us are, and obviously we don't have. If you're a non-Catholic in the band,
Right.
then you don't really have a big beef with the Catholic world.
Obviously,
Majority of the band.
You're not exactly bucking against the system.
Yeah, we're not
If you're hanging out
hiding
with
it. We're
Janie
not
and the
keeping it.
Stonemasons, right.
It's not secret.
But for me, the real question is like, what is the point of playing music? And the answer is, ultimately, it is to give glory to God.
Yeah.
But the whole point is that, like, it's like that psalm, the heavens proclaim the glory of the Lord. It's like the stars aren't they're not shouting Catholic theology. They're certainly not shouting Catholic theology out of context.
Right.
They're just being what they are.
Yeah.
You know, and they're doing it as well as they can, if we're going to lean into the metaphor, right? And that's kind of the point with the music. It's like we're trying to. The glory of God is man fully alive. It's like, a human being being good at being a human being is actually glorifying God. It is actually praise to God.
That's a beautiful way to describe it. That's kind of what I've been trying to say, but yeah. You described it perfectly. Yeah.
But it's true that when you guys get people together, they relax, they enjoy themselves, there's smiles, there's joy. They forget a little bit for a little while about like maybe things that like cloud their brains about worries and concerns and like that. And they have to just enjoy again. Like I think people could hear some songs and be like, well, what are they trying to say here? It's like maybe it's just a really good toe tapping tune. It's just really entertaining and like it's not always always bad for it to just be something like enjoyable, right? Like the profane doesn't always necessarily equal evil to some degree, but there's also a real point here too, and to kind of get back to the message, right? Like, I forget who said this. It was an Eastern Rite priest, I think, who had said this. He said, "We're not primarily Homo sapiens, humans, right? Like thinking things, right? We're not really primarily we're Homo sacerdos, right? Where he says you're primarily a priestly people, right? So God sets Adam and Eve over the garden, and they're to be stewards of all of creation and bring all of creation back to glory of God, right?
Yeah.
And in a real way, what you're doing is that, right? There's sort of there's a priestly action that's taking place here, right? That we're bringing all the goods that you possess, right? And really, arguably, a good that you truly possess, right? That like you have the ability to formulate music and to do it in such a way that in some very overt ways that give glory to God, right? Like the hope beyond it all, your beautiful Advent piece there, Come Emmanuel, right? And then Scholastica, right? And so many other wonderful songs, but also like even in just like in like Round Rollicking, what was it like? And a few other ones like that. Like Pickpocket Road is just an entertaining piece, right? It almost reminds me of the End of the Road book series there, right? Where the guys talk about like this like a little like one horse town like in the middle of Alaska, right? So it's like very simple sort of life thing, but like it's just ultimately a very good thing. So again, thank you guys so much for sitting down and doing this. This is awesome. Yeah. I think we should try to close with a rendition of Up to Much. I gotta get the lyrics up here.
Try anything once.
All right.
Hold on. I gotta get the lyrics up here so I don't. Are the lyrics on Spotify if I look at them?
They should be.
Yeah. The new album's gonna have a lyric book, which is pretty cool.
Well, that's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
We're hoping to make that kind of a more.
David put a ton of work into that.
It's 20 songs.
Yeah. Not only did you learn how to use
Adobe Photoshop.
I was like, what's it called? But then you spent like a whole day just writing everything out.
It was a lot of fun, except for when it wasn't.
Yeah, I'm glad you do that part.
Okay.
Well, we'll try to do this together. We'll see how we do. Ready? And then we can close on this.
Yeah.
I wanna say thanks for the call. It's good to have a reminder of goodwill, and it feels right to have someone say hello and not goodbye. Have
haven't been up to much. No one's there to say, you're up early, what's the rush? I haven't been up to much. I haven't been up to much. I remember when I was a kid, skipping rocks and just dreaming. I had a million jobs lined up as soon as they let me drive. But I haven't been up to much. No one's there to say, you're up early, what's the rush? I haven't been up to much. I haven't been up to much. An illusion inside my head, breaking rocks and always surviving. I had a million miles to go as soon as they let me fly. Oh, but I haven't been up to much. No one's there to say, you're up early, what's the rush? I haven't been up to much. I haven't been up to much. Yeah, I wanna say thanks for the call. Lately I've been wondering if anyone cares at all. I don't have a lot to relate, but I wanna say thanks for the call. Can we have with the blessing, Father, if you don't mind? We'll make
Absolutely. And may God bless you, you and all who watch this, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Quick thing, where can people access any of your stuff? So you guys are on
Spotify, obviously. We have everything on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, Facebook.
Yeah, if you want to see the upcoming shows, Facebook is probably the best.
Upcoming shows, yes. We got March 16th, and then we also got the album release right around the corner.
Yep.
Which,
February 21st.
Yeah, the 21st, which the Good Father will be at.
Parish.
And Deacon Andre will be there performing.
Yep.
I don't know when this is going to be released, but hopefully by the time anyone sees this, hi Mom, the Jading the Stonemasons website should, I believe, be up and running. It'll certainly be in its beta stages, so keep your eyes peeled. I think it's going to be just jadingthestonemasons.com. So, yeah, should be fun.
Well, thank you all for watching.